let me start by sharing. Let me share the slides. Actually, tulichokuwa nacho leo hapa tunaangalia corporate management. Kimsingi tutakuwa tunaangalia corporate management kwa sababu katika hali ya kawaida if mheshimiwa hapa anatuambia kwamba he is trading, ana trade kupitia hiyo kampuni, I don't remember hiyo body. Here and there tunafikiri kwamba it's important in any cost, in any case aweze kufahamu utaratibu mzima wa management of a corporate entity kisheria ukoje. This is what I was aiming at. Sasa I don't know whether tunaziona hizo slides hapo. Let me do it this way.
Naona bado daktari, sijaziona. Okay. Nafikiri nafungua screen. Yes, I can see.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Kwa hiyo hapa kimsingi the whole idea, the whole presentation ya muda mfupi tu ita revolve around corporate management, lakini we have to have a starting point ambapo we're going to start by asking ourselves a question. Hivi hii kampuni yangu ina operate kwenye philosophy ipi? That's the reason as to why I thought kwamba it's very important for us to be aware of the corporate personhood, hii concept ya corporate personhood. Na pia when we're dealing with this corporate personhood, corporate person, corporate hii corpus, hii body, what are the issues? Or tukafikiri kwamba it's very important for us to consider or to have a highlight of corporate birth or corporate formation, kitu ambacho nadhani Mheshimiwa Carles hapo ni lazima utakuwa umeshakipitia mlipokuwa mnafanya formation, mlipokuwa mnaanzisha ule mchakato mpaka kupata ile certificate of incorporation. Hii ndio ambayo inaitwa corporate birth. And then sasa corporate formation, corporate birth ikishafanyika, we have a certificate in place. What next? Ili tuweze kuachieve zile objectives za corporate entity, ni lazima sasa tuwe na management. Lakini sasa hii management itakiwa iende katika utaratibu upi? What is the law telling us? What are the do's and don'ts? Na kama ukifanya do's zako correctly, what are you vying for? At the end of the day, what are you likely to achieve? Lakini failure to that, kwa sababu tunasema kwamba in law tunasema kwamba wherever there is a right, there is a remedy. Wherever there is a duty, there is a liability. Si ndio? Failure to do the do's, then what is the consequence? Lakini baada ya hapo kuna concept nyingine ya corporate financing of a corporate entity inatakiwa ikae katika mazingira gani? What is the law saying? And then we have corporate rescue in a situation whereby this corporate entity is seen as failing to achieve the objectives. What are the avenues through which the law is providing? Tusema kwamba we can as well rescue this corporate entity. So failure to rescue the company, mwisho wa siku, this corporate entity could as well be declared a dead company. Sasa what is the procedure sasa wa kuiua, wa kuiondoa, wa kuiphase out from the corporate shelf? This is where we talk about corporate winding up. Kimsingi nimezungumza mwanzo, from formation, katikati na pia mwisho. Sasa most importantly hapo penye the real actors. Who are the real actors? Who are the minds? Who is the body? Who is the real body? Who is the real actor? Who is the brain behind the company? These are the directors. Na hawa ndio ambao nitawazungumzia kwenye haka ka segment ketu ka leo. Lakini at the end of the day, who are these actors acting for? Very important when you talk of the actors, utaona kuna namna ambavyo tutakuwa tunazungumzia beneficiary. Who is the number one beneficiary? Who should be the top priority when we are talking of corporate management? Here we have the beneficiaries, ambako kimsingi the law always speaks of the corporate entity as the top priority, as the top beneficiary. Lakini pia development ipo sasa hivi, there has to be consideration for not only the corporate entity, lakini, but was created for wealth creation, lakini for whose benefit? For whose benefit? It's for the benefit of the corporate body. Lakini pia indirectly, kunakuwa na hiyo shareholder value maximization through top priority to the corporate person. Sasa tunarudi nyuma kidogo huko kwenye historia, tunapokuwa tunazungumzia corporate personhood, we have a definition which was made in that case, Smith versus Anderson, ambaye ilituambia kwamba a corporate entity is a group of persons associated together for the attainment of a common end, which could be social or economic, or it could be a voluntary association of persons or individuals formed for some common purposes. This is what was laid down in the case of Smith versus Anderson, ambaye inatuambia kwamba kimsingi hii ni association ya watu ambao they contribute money in the form of shares now, lakini the reason behind or the idea is to employ the same money for a certain common purpose. Tunaambiwa kwamba it could be social, lakini in most cases tunaona kwamba the idea behind contributing money as shareholders to the corporate person, to the corpus, is to make sure kwamba at the end of the day kunakuwa na economic gain. This is by and large the way through which corporate entities zina operate au zinalenga. Lakini in our Companies Act, in our Tanzanian Companies Act, we also have a definition of a corporate entity ambayo inasema kwamba is too blunt anyway. Inasema kwamba it is referring to a company as a company formed and registered under the same act or an exemption, or zitakuwa stipulated or zitakuwa highlighted in the memorandum of association. Lakini the moment this body is the moment the body is formed, duly formed, we have our certificate in place, that body, that corpus acquires certain characteristics. It becomes a person, lakini an artificial person. In law tunasema kwamba it's a juridical person, kwamba it is created by the law. Tunasema kwamba it's a separate legal person, it's an artificial person, it's a juridical person. So whenever you see those words focus, ni kwamba kunakuwa na some sort of a artificiality au kunakuwa na some sort of a separation. It's like now, the moment we have Mr. X and Mr. Y and Mr. Z, umeamua sasa we're forming a corporate entity, the moment they're duly formed, the moment we have that certificate of incorporation, unakuwa formed as XYZ Company Limited, nasema kwamba here we have a fourth person, tuna mtu wa nne, kisheria anatambulika kama mtu mwingine, na kwamba the fact that huyu ni artificial person, he or it acquires a separate legal personhood, ambayo out of being an artificial person, out of acquiring separate legal personality, it acquires a perpetual succession in the sense that who trade their shares wakaleta mtu mwingine wakaondoka, lakini this corporate entity in a perpetual succession. Manake ni kwamba the fact that this creature of statute was a creature of the law, kuondoka kwake, phase out from the shelf, from the corporate shelf, ni kwa kupitia sheria yenyewe. Ndio jile jambo nilikuwa nimeambia pale mwanzoni, when we talk of corporate winding up, this is a way through which a corporate entity phases out, through which a corporate entity inaondoka, ni kama vile corporate death. So we have corporate death through the same law, so corporate death through the same law kupitia utaratibu wa corporate winding up. Lakini pia it acquires a seal to its legal formation. It acquires liability which is limited in nature, kwa maana ya kwamba the liability of the company remains to be that of the company and cannot be extended to the individual shareholders. Lakini it is possible by way of through being formed as a corporate entity, that this corporate entity can transfer its shares. However, we have a limitation kwenye private companies. This transferability of shares is possible in public companies, like in private companies, we have some sort of a limitation which is duly provided by the law. Na when we have a corporate entity duly formed, tunaambiwa kwamba this corporate entity acquires a separate management and separate control. Lakini hivyo hivyo tunaambiwa kwamba the moment I call today, my focus will be on the idea of you are engaged in the management of the day-to-day activities in a corporate entity in so many respects. Sasa, I thought that it's very important for us to understand what corporate management entails, what corporate management requires. You're sitting in the board of directors. What is expected of you as a CEO? What is expected of you as a manager at a certain level? I thought that this is very important. So nakumbuka there's a time nilikuwa nazungumzia a corporate director. A corporate director when acting ni lazima kuhakikisha kwamba anafahamu that he or she is acting for the interest of the corporate entity and not for the interest of himself. Lakini, very important to note is the fact that the moment you act for the best interest of any person occupying the position of a director by whatever name called, of course, the definition is not very pleasant. Lakini, when you have a director, as per the requirements of the Companies Act, naambiwa kwamba this person in the name of a director is endowed with or is given authority to act. For instance, when we look at section 181, section 181 of the Companies Act inasema kwamba subject to any modifications, exceptions, or limitations contained in this act or in the company's articles, the directors of a company have all the powers necessary for managing and for directing and supervising the management of the business and the affairs of the company. Ukiangalia section 181, you can come up with 3 very important keywords. You have keyword number 1, managing. You have direct, imeundwa, imekuwa incorporated kwa ajili ya kufanya certain actions, certain activities which are mainly, in most cases, tunasema kwamba mainly for economic gain. Tunasema kwamba the role or the duty of a corporate director is to ensure that he drives the company towards attaining its objectives, its goals, through performance or effective performance of its core activities as set or as provided for under the memorandum and articles of association. Nadhani everybody is well aware of what the articles and the memorandum of a company. So we have quite a number of cases which have tried to define who a corporate director is. For instance, we have here a case. Remember I said that I said earlier that our Companies Act has not been so good in defining who a corporate director is. So we have here a case of Aberdeen Railway Company versus Black Brothers. It's an English case. It's a case of 1854, which said that directors are a body, together they are a body to whom is delegated a duty of managing the general affairs of a company. And inasema kwamba a corporate body can only act, through agents, and it is of course the duty of those agents so to act as best to promote the interest of the corporation whose affairs they are conducting. So you see that it's like if you don't have corporate directors, then there is no way this corporate entity will be able to operate. There's no way this corporate entity will be able to achieve its goals. There is no way that this corporate entity will be able to go or to kwenda kwenye ile direction ambayo ilikuwa inatakiwa kwenda as reflected in the memos. Lakini sasa, in order for these corporate directors to do that which they're required to do, the law provides quite a number of duties to the corporate directors. Kwa maana sisi kama CEOs, we are the ones who are the managers, and you together with the body ambayo iko ndani ya corporate, ndani ya hiyo body, we are endowed with duty. We are given a duty to make sure that tunafanya yale ambayo tunatakiwa kuyafanya ili kuhakikisha kwamba the main goal or the main objective for which the corporate entity was formed is duly attained. So in conducting those managerial functions, kama ambavyo section 181 inatuambia, in conducting the managerial functions, corporate directors are bound. Corporate directors are bound by specific legal duties. Legal duties, manake the duties are a creature, the duties are enacted or provided for by the law. So they're bound by specific duties which carry a corresponding liability, subject to failure to satisfy the same. What it means here is just like the way I was saying earlier, kwamba nasema kwamba where there is a right, there has to be a remedy. Pale ambako pana haki lazima pawe na consequence. Lakini at the same time, where you are given a duty to act, failure to do that, kuna corresponding liability, subject to failure to satisfy the same. So for whose interest at this point? Here we have the basis of these sections ambazo mnaziona hapo kwenye screen. We have duty number 1, we have a duty of care. We have a duty of care and skills, which is provided for under section 185, that the law strictly requires that a corporate director acts with a degree of care and also skill, because it is anticipated, although the Companies Act does not haitoi a certain degree, it is not coming up with clear standards or clear provision saying that in order for one to be a corporate director, tunahitaji mtu huyu awe na elimu hii. Lakini it is saying that there has to be a duty of care and skill. Nadhani at some point in time we think kwamba skill ni kitu ambacho labda inawezekana ikawa acquired, si ndio? Kwamba inaweza ikawa acquired darasani or something like that. Lakini strictly speaking, the law requires that when a person is manning the company, this person has to act with duty of care and skills. Tutaongea baadaye kwamba why these duties, what is the rationale of these duties. So there we have the duty of care and skills as provided for under section 185 of the Companies Act. Nadhani if we should come across section 185 mkaisoma vizuri, you'll be able to see what that section is ina stipulate nini kwa mapana yake, kwa kuangalia single word. This is how we read the legal provisions, kwamba you have to read the provision wholly and then you break it in order to get a clear message. So we have duty number 1, duty of care and skills, and then duty number 2 is the duty to act in good faith. That is provided for under section 182. That this corporate director is endowed with a duty to act in good faith, like in good faith, like in for the interest of the company. Lakini you have a duty to disclose an interest. You as a corporate director, kama ambavyo tunasema kwamba you have to act for the best interest of the company, then wherever panapotokea conflicting interest, kwamba there is something ambacho kinaweza kukuleta closer to a situation whereby your own interests conflict with those of the company, then it's very important for you to disclose the kind of interest. For instance, you have a situation whereby you are working in a company, sindio, it's a public company, and then in that public company, imeonekana kwamba we need a person from outside kuja ku provide service in that company. Sasa tuko kwenye stage ya deliberation. you as a corporate director, sindio, this is your wife, this is your relative, this is a brother, you should be in a position to state moja kwa moja, kusema kwamba nina interest katika hili, therefore nisilitolee maamuzi, kwa sababu doing that may go against the interest of the company, the interest of the very same entity. That is provided for under section 209. Specifically kwenye masuala ya contract, this is when section 209 applies. And then we have a duty in relation to employees that is provided for under section 183, kwa sababu kuwatendea vizuri, kukaa vizuri na employees, kufuata taratibu za kisheria in as far as handling employees is also part of making sure that you take into account the interest of the company, though indirectly. And then we have section 184, that is a duty to exercise power for proper purpose. So ukiangalia hapa section 182, it has been reiterated, it has been properly defined. Mpaka inatuambia kwamba, mfano mzuri inatuambia kwamba a director of a company, when exercising powers or performing duties, he must act honestly and in good faith, and in what the director himself believes to be the best interest of the company. That is what it entails when section 182 says that a corporate director has a duty to act in good faith and in the best interest of the company. And then there we have section 183, which is saying that the matters to which the directors of the company are to have regard in the performance of their functions include the interest of the members and the interest of the company employees. So by doing that, indirectly, you're in favor of proper operation or proper management of the corporate entity. So failure to that, then you're going to drive, or you're going to bring the corporate entity into chaos. You have employers rioting, you have employees rioting, you have employees taking the corporate entity to court. So at the end of the day, there you have a problem. The law requires for this corporate entity, for this corporate director, to have regard, to have consideration to the interest of the employees. Very, very important. And especially at this point in time where labor laws, Sharia za kazi, zimekuwa amended to a large extent, it's very important that you as young CEOs take note of that and to make sure that you deal with your employees katika namna ambayo is also in favor of the interest of the company. And then we have section 184, ambako nasema kwamba this duty is that duty to exercise powers, corporate powers, directors' powers for proper purpose. Now that proper purpose, as I said earlier, ni kwamba then purpose is that which is for which the corporate entity was incorporated, was formed. Manake, you have to make sure that when you're operating, when you're doing, or when you're performing your duties, you do the same for a proper purpose, lakini without forgetting the gist of section 182, which requires that everything which is being done has to be done with a degree of care and skill and for the best interest of the corporate entity. And then duty of care, as I was saying earlier, ni kwamba that knowledge and that experience which is carried by the corporate director has to be properly utilized, has to be properly used as reasonably expected for a person in the position or in the capacity of a director. As I said earlier, kwamba the Companies Act does not expressly or specifically specify, au haisemi expressly kwamba a corporate director anatakiwa ni mtu ambaye ana kiwango hiki cha elimu, kwa sababu huko ndio tukasema kwamba skill ipo kwa kiasi hiki au la. This is very unfortunate, lakini the law still requires that when exercising a duty, when exercising a power, when managing, when supervising, when controlling, tunaambiwa kabisa kwamba ni lazima tuhakikishe kwamba this corporate director exercises a certain degree of care. Unfortunately, kipimo pia hakipo in the Companies Act. We don't have that yardstick, neither kwenye regulations za sheria hiyo, we don't have that yardstick. Kimsingi hii ni common law duty, lakini sasa hivi it's a statutory duty. kwa sababu imekuwa codified under section 185 ikituambia kabisa kwamba that corporate director has to exercise care, has to exercise skill, and he has to exercise diligence, which is expected, which is reasonably expected from him as a person who stands in that position of a corporate director. Na kwamba if you have any special knowledge, if you have any special experience as a director, that has to be utilized, that has to be reasonably utilized in order to make sure that you further or you move or you participate kwenye kuhakikisha kwamba the goals of the corporate entity are properly met. As I was saying earlier, we don't have those minimum skills documented anywhere in our laws. Lakini kinachobakia ni ile expectation kwamba we are expecting that you as a corporate director will demonstrate reasonable care and skill, which is ambayo inaweza ikawa ikapimwa from any person who holds a similar position as a director. Na when a person as a corporate director moves, when a person as a corporate director leaves office, it is expected that the delegation is okay, it is possible. Lakini the moment you leave that office or you delegate your duties, it is expected that you would still be there foreseeing or checking out to make sure that any decision making or in the corporate level abides to that duty of care and skill. So at the end of the day, it's very important that you make sure that the decision, when it is made, whether it is an economic decision or a social decision or a social economic decision which is being made by the corporate entity, inafanyika ikiwa inazingatia kwamba kumekuwa na a certain degree of care and skill. Because at the end of the day, a corporate director would remain liable for the final decision, despite the fact that this corporate director amefanya delegation. Nadhani maybe if I should give a hint, kwamba tunaambiwa kwamba kwenye administrative law it is possible to delegate, ndio, lakini the moment talked about the duty to disclose an interest, this is provided for under section 209. Section 209 natuambia kwamba in a situation whereby there is a conflict of interest, then that has to be properly disclosed to the corporate management, ili kuhakikisha kwamba you are trading or you are operating in the best interest of the company. And then you have a duty which is not codified. This is a duty which is not codified, which is not provided, which is not documented in our Companies Act. Like, it's a duty which is available. At the end of the day, it has to be seen that you as a corporate director, in your acting, in making decisions, in a situation whereby there is a claim, in a situation whereby you have somebody who's unhappy, it has to be seen that you as a corporate director really acted in good faith. This is a common law duty, which requires that for the directors to act bona fidely, in good faith, and in the interest of the company. Kwa sababu, we are saying that corporate directors must always act, must always behave, must always decide in a manner which aims at promoting the successes of the company. Now, this is the main idea. This is the real idea, or this is the motive behind corporate formation. People do form companies, people do register companies, or people do incorporate companies in order to for profit acquisition. In most cases, kuna zile nyingine ambazo zikawa ni service, lakini in most cases kuna kuwa na lengo hasa au idea behind ni kufurther certain economic ends. As such, this corporate director, he must act in good faith for the success of the company and for the benefit of the shareholders, having regard to the likely consequences of any long-term decision. Ambapo in acting in good faith ni lazima pawe na consideration ya haya yafuatayo. Lazima pawe na consideration ya employees, lazima pawe na consideration ya business relationship with the suppliers, if any, kama kuna contracts zozote with suppliers. Lazima kuwe na consideration ya customers and others. Lazima pawe sasa hivi you're all aware with of to do with corporate governance, ambapo ndani ya corporate governance we have this whole idea of corporate social responsibility, kwamba when acting you have to also consider, are you a socially responsible corporate citizen? Therefore, it's very important for you to make sure that you have consideration to the impact of the activities which are being performed by the corporate entity on the community and the environment. At the same time, we're being told that you also have to make sure that you maintain the reputation of the company for having high standards of business conducts. You have to be seen as a corporate entity which is serious in delivery. The output that you're bringing to the market is of high standard compared to others. Na hii ndio maana kusema kwamba at the end of the day you have to act in good faith, na usionekana kwamba if it's a pharmaceutical company, then your company which produces counterfeit goods ambazo zikawa na madhara kwa community and so the like. Lakini you also have to be seen as a corporate entity which acts fairly. Lakini at the same time you have to be seen as a corporate entity which operates or which acts subject to the legal requirements, and at the same time, if you have any creditors, you're also considering the interests of the creditors to your company. So you call a corporate entity which is duly formed na inatumika kama vehicle ya kufanya mambo fulani fulani ambayo mwisho wa siku inaweza kuonekana kwamba this is a corporate entity which is not formed for certain clean acts, rather vitu ambavyo vinaweza vikapelekea corporate entity ikaingia kwenye matatizo. Lakini as I was saying earlier, maybe this is a way, au hapa ni mahali ambapo we need to reflect. When we talk of corporate duties, nasema kwamba where there is a duty, there is a corresponding liability. So at this point in time, unasema kwamba it is very important now, sisi kama CEOs, to take into account the practicalities around corporate directors' duties, kwa sababu these corporate directors' duties build on the concept of corporate liability. Sababu kumbuka when tulikuwa tunaangalia zile characters, subject to incorporation, subject to formation, this corporate entity acquires certain features. This corporate entity acquires certain behaviors, inapata features mpya. When it comes to liability, tunasema kwamba the liability is limited. It cannot be extended to the corporate shareholders when it's a limited liability company. Depends sasa kwamba liability yake imekuwa limited by shares or by guarantee. That is another dimension. Lakini it's very important to take into account, kwa maana how corporate directors, it's very important to make sure that you abide, you respect, you make sure that you behave or you handle corporate affairs in a manner which is required by the law as set in those sections that we talked about earlier. Kwa sababu those duties build on the concept or inform the concept of corporate liability, na kwa sababu corporate directors are considered as the brain behind corporate actions and omissions. Kwa sababu sasa hivi as tunapoangalia maendeleo, tunapoangalia development kwenye eneo la corporate law, we've come to a point where kumekuwa na disregard sasa ya ile idea ya separate legal personality. At some point in time tunaona kabisa kwamba katika mazingira fulani tunaona kwamba this corporate entity ambayo tunasema kwamba this corporate entity ambayo inaongozwa na directors inakuwa na it can sue and it can be sued, na mwisho wa siku inaonekana kwamba kuna limited liability, na kwamba liability inaweza ikawa ni ya kwake peke yake. Tumeona kwamba inaweza ikafika mahali corporate directors wanaweza wakaunganishwa kwenye certain liabilities na wakawa sued kutokana tu na jinsi ambavyo walishindwa au hawakuenenda au hawakubehave in a manner which is required by the law in as far as making corporate decisions is concerned. We have quite a number of cases. Kwa miaka ya 2000 we have if you can write, you have the famous Enron affair, Enron as ENRON. We have Parmalat affair, Parmalat corporate scandal. We have that one of WorldCom, ambapo unaona kabisa kwamba the reason behind, or the reasons as to why we had such corporate scandals, ikapelekea corporate collapses, kwa sababu these corporate entities were taken to court, mwisho wa siku wakapigwa fine kubwa kubwa, ambapo mwisho wa siku zilipelekea these corporate entities zika phase out from the corporate shelf. Ni kutokana na ile failure ya kumanage or failure ya kufanya zile proper corporate decisions as required by the corporate directors. Imepelekea mpaka some corporate directors wamefungwa, lakini ukiangalia ni ile namna ambayo ile governance landscape au uelewa wa corporate governance kisheria umekuwa ni mdogo, lakini it always starts with the duties and as provided for under these specific laws. Lakini kimsingi hapa, in our case we start with the Companies Act, lakini tunapozungumzia corporate liability, kama nilivyokuwa nimewambia mwanzoni hapa, ni kwamba this concept of corporate criminology is relatively new jurisprudence ulimwenguni na Tanzania kwa sasa, lakini hata ukiangalia marekebisho ya sheria ambayo yamefanyika recently kwa kupitia sheria mbalimbali hapa Tanzania, it's quite a number of them. Utaona kabisa jinsi gani ambavyo nao tunawaona corporate entities wakiwa considered kama perpetrators wa crimes, kama criminals. There was never a situation where you could hold a corporate entity or a corporate body liable in crime. Lakini nao tunaona jinsi gani ambavyo regulatory landscape inakuja to the extent of accommodating, to the extent of taking on board corporate entities. Na sasa ukiangalia kwa mfano sheria ya kodi, ukiangalia section 17 up to section 90 ya Tax Administration Act, you see clearly kwamba Cap 438 inaonyesha jinsi gani ambavyo sasa hivi corporate entities na zenyewe zinaingia kwenye kuwa considered kama fraudsters, kama tax fraudsters, now subject now to decision making, subject to financial decision making, masuala ya tax evasion, yanaweza kupelekea jinsi gani ambavyo corporate entity inaweza kuwa held criminal liable. Lakini sasa how does that happen? It starts from the managing, supervising, directing a corporate entity. It starts from there. Na that, kama tulivyoona hapo mwanzo, ni kitu ambacho it has to be owned, ni lazima kimilikiwe, ni lazima kishughulikiwe na corporate directors. Na pia sasa hivi tumeona jinsi gani ambavyo sheria ya money laundering yenyewe inaleta provisions ambazo moja kwa moja zinaenda kugusa hiyo corpus ambayo mwanzoni ilikuwa inaweza kwa namna moja au nyingine kutumika kama shield, kutumika kama ngao ya kuzuia corporate entity from being held criminally liable. Lakini hata hivyo tunaona kwamba failure to abide to those prescribed rules, you don't have a straightforward answer kwamba hivi I'm a corporate director na nilifanya hiki in my corporate entity, therefore nimemaliza, I cannot be held liable, or my company cannot be touched, or my company will be affected na kupata labda na kuwa considered au na kuwa convicted au na kufikiriwa au kuwa charged kama corporate entity ambayo madai civil imetenda kosa au criminally imetenda kosa. There is no straightforward answer because it depends on the circumstances. That is why it's very important also to be aware of which acts will be considered criminal and which acts or which omissions will be considered criminal. Lakini it all starts with a clear understanding of what the duties are from a corporate director, na kufanya hivi, is it acting in the best interest of the company, au kufanya vile ni kama nitakuwa nimefanya otherwise. So against that background ambayo nimeitoa, I consider that it's very important sisi kama young CEOs, sisi kama corporate directors at some point in times to take all these dimensions into account, kwa kuanza by starting with an understanding of what the law requires in as far as corporate management is concerned, kama ambavyo tumefanya hivi punde, kuelewa who we are, what is required of us, na at the end of the day what can happen when we fail to do what is required of us. Nadhani baada ya kusema hilo, naomba niseme kama nimefika mwisho kwa presentation yetu hii fupi ya leo. If there's any question, you're welcome, members. Thank you.
Nashukuru daktari kwa presentation yako. I think it was well understood. Nashukuru sana. To my side, you may light in many areas. Now I was asking, I'm having some little confusion. Actually, some of the terminologies. For example, what would be the difference between a director, a managing director, and a CEO? Yeah. What would be the differences in terms of the legal accountability and the way they do operate? Kwa sababu the way ninavyoiona, unakuta mtu mwingine ana commence biashara kama ikiwa ni sole proprietor, hakuna separation kati ya yeye na biashara.
Katika kidogo hapo umesema the way unavyoiona.
The way ninavyoiona, kwa mfano biashara nyingi zinaanza kama sole proprietor. Zote hazianzi kama limited companies. It started as a sole proprietor. Lakini ikiwa limited company, you have more than one directors. Kama kuna more than
of administrative duties.
ways. Yeah, in both ways, Doctor.
Mara nyingi hata kwenye nyingi you will not find a place ambayo inatuambia kwamba huyu sio director katika section hii, huyu sio director for this purpose. Utawaona wote ni directors. Kimsingi mimi nadhani mara nyingi especially kwenye private companies unaona huwa inawekwa hivyo kama namna ya kuonyesha kwamba when it comes to handling certain issues, when it comes to veto and decision making, huyu ndiye atakuwa mkubwa, lakini all of them huwa naona kama ni directors. Hello?
Yeah, Daktari.
If you have a different way of looking at it, we can still discuss, we can still share. Labda kama una mtazamo tofauti.
Yaani unajua mimi kitu ambacho nakuta nashindwa kukuelewa ni kwamba kwa mfano mkiwa mmeform biashara kama watu watatu, labda mna manage ile biashara. You're all directors. Sasa yani unasikia daktari, ambacho mimi kinachanganya ni kwamba kwa mfano na kwenye other issue ambayo nataka niulize pia, hiyo synonym kati ya director na shareholder pia inani confuse. Biashara za kawaida ambazo sio corporate kubwa, corporate ndogo za watu watatu. Sisi tunarigadi kwanza director ni shareholder, sio tunarigadi. Ndio maana kwenye lugha ya Kiswahili wetu mkurugenzi unamrigadi kama director ni shareholder. So I wanted to know exactly kwamba is every director necessarily awe ni shareholder? Kwa mfano
no,
ukirudi nikiangalia hapa mimi profile ya CRDB more or less nakutana na some of the terminologies. Kuna mtu wa kwanza ambaye ni non-executive director na board chairman. Maana yake nazungumzia board of directors. Nakutana na mtu mwingine ambaye ni independent. So why the word independent? An executive member and vice board chairman. Watano tena independent.
Ndio maana nikasema mwanzo kwamba kuna wale wanaitwa EDs na kuna wale wanaitwa NEDs, independent or non-independent. Sasa hivi tumekuja kwenye ulimwengu wa corporate governance kama nilivyokuwa nasema hapo mwanzo. Maybe tutaongea na uongozi tuone, maybe tufike mahali siku moja tuwe na session ambayo itakuwa inazungumzia corporate governance tu, na tuangalie zile models models za corporate governance. Kimsingi hiyo ambayo tunazungumzia, for instance, structure ya CRDB, na mtu pale kama board chair member, si ndio, board chairperson, si ndio, ambapo huyu board chairperson huyu, manake unapozungumzia board ya CRDB, huyu ndiye chairperson, and is not necessarily, manake huyu sio mtu wa ndani wa CRDB, si ndio? Huyu sio mtu wa ndani. Yule ambaye ni CEO wa CRDB ambaye ni nani yule? Anaitwa nani yule? Majid sijui. Majid manake ana report kwenye bodi huku, ni CEO. Yes. Si ndio Yes. Manake hawa ambao wako nje, hawa ndio independent. Hao ambao umeona kwenye hiyo document, hawa ndio independent directors, kwa sababu hawa ni watu, na huyu ambaye yuko kwenye bodi ya CRDB anaweza kaa kwenye bodi ya another corporate entity, anaweza kaa kwenye bodi hata 5. Kwa maana ya kwamba huyu ni mtu ambaye anatakiwa awe analeta mawazo kutoka nje kuyaleta CRDB ili kuweza kuboresha utendaji au utekelezaji wa sheria, utekelezaji wa zile objectives za CRDB kufuata miongozo, guidelines, sheria za nchi kulingana na vile ambavyo wanataka kuvifanya. We want to do this, we want to engage in this thing, we want to venture here, we want to have this new portfolio, what do you suggest, what do you think? Umeona? Kwa hiyo hawa independent na non-independent directors ni kwamba kuna wale wa ndani na ambao wale wa nje, lakini kimsingi huyu chairperson ana Majid Nsekela, huyu CEO, ana report kimsingi ambayo yuko juu yake ni huyu chairperson ambaye yuko ni chairperson wa board ya CRDB. Maana hawa ndio decision makers at this point in time, lakini ni kwenye hizi kampuni ambazo ni kubwa, lakini zinakuwa na watu ambao sema mimi ni shareholder lakini mimi ni director. Tuko ma director watatu and we are also shareholders. Kuna kuaga na mikingamo hapo, kwa sababu at the end of the day ndipo tunasema kwamba care has to be taken kuhakikisha kwamba whenever you are doing whatever you are doing, everything for the interest of the company. Mwisho wa siku ya kufanya quite a number of offenses. Sheria nyingi sasa hivi zimeshaligundua hilo, ndio maana unaona kama vile kuna mapinduzi ya kufanya some sort of a revamp, some sort of kama kurefurbish hivi, kuona kwamba how do we get on board corporate entity ambayo imekuwa inaonekana zamani ilikuwa kama vile iko slippery hivi, haiwezi kufikiwa, na tunaringia ndani zaidi, tunafungua lile pazia la ile abstract body ambayo tunasema kwamba the moment it's incorporated, this body haiwezi kufikiwa kwa namna yoyote ile. Tunaenda kwa yule the real actor, tunaenda kwa Mr. Kales ambaye alifanya maamuzi fulani siku fulani yakaifikisha community hii hapa ilipofika. So therefore we can hold Mr. Kales civil liable na pia in crime liable, and also the company liable.
Na kitu kingine daktari, kwa mfano kama in case
if you're interested
in case kwa mfano kama nikiangalia kwenye companies ambazo ndio sisi tunaanza nazo, wale kwenye hii session ambayo tumezipitia, tumekuwa encouraged to incorporate your board ikusaidia ku make decisions and so forth, ambao unakuwa na chairman of the board kwenye structure yake, aidha kama ni mtu yote ambaye ana experience na nini, unakuwa na watu ambao na different expertise, alafu wana advise secretary of board awe ni one of the CEO ambaye ni yuko kwenye executive part kwenye Excom kwa ajili ya kutoa feedback na ku bridge kati ya director
kama secretary.
Yes. Now I was asking in case anything goes west, for example, unataka umsue. Sasa where do you sue in the levels? Unamsue director in terms of shareholders?
Unataka kumsue nani at this point?
I'm saying in case company misbehave.
Unataka kumsue nani at this point?
No, maana mimi ndo nauliza sasa. Now I'm asking in case company misbehave in the issue of tax. Sasa on the legal basis, who do you sue? Una sue directors in terms of shareholders, directors in terms of chairman of the board, or una sue the executive part, the top of the executive part? Who do you sue?
Ukisema executive, nataka tuelewane vizuri kwamba unapozungumzia executive hapa unazungumzia managers, wale ambao huwa wanapewa instruction na,
Yes.
na board, ndio ikiongozwa na chairman, si ndio
Yes.
Na ukizungumza chairman,
Yes.
ukisema the chairmanship part, maana unazungumzia board ya kampuni, si ndio? Ukizungumza upande wa shareholders, unawazungumzia shareholders ambao wao ndio huwa wanasemewa na board kwa ujumla, kwa sababu you have to remember kwamba executive ndani ya board ya kampuni inawakilishwa na CEO. Unielewa inawakilishwa na CEO ambaye anaingia pale, si ndio? Sasa at this point in time, naturally kuonyesha ni kwamba when you talk of the corporate entity, unapozungumzia corporate entity siku zote au mara zote focus yako ile ni corpus, ambako as I was saying earlier, kulikuwa kuna case moja ilikuwa yaamliwa miaka mingi sana, lakini imekuwa ndio driving case hata kwenye high court commercial division hapa imekuwa ikitumika kwamba the corporate entity, si ndio, tunasema kwamba ni corpus, it's just an abstract, si ndio, ni kitu which exists, it's something which exists in paper, si ndio. Nikija hapo ofisini kwako nitakuta XYZ Company Limited as incorporated by BRELA blah blah blah, tunakuwa na muhuri wa registrar, si ndio. Lakini ile corporate body iwe act, corporate entity haina miguu, corporate entity haina macho, haina kichwa, si ndio. Ili iweze kuact na cooperate inapewa kichwa na macho na unanielewa inapewa kichwa na macho na Mr. Kales, si ndio Yes. Mr. Kales in the form of the executive na Mr. Kales in the form of chairman, si ndio. Manake hawa combined, hawa ndio board ya kampuni. So whenever we want to deal or anybody kama third party akitaka kudeal na corporate entity, maana yake ana deal na corporate entity in its abstract form, lakini sasa anayokuja ataissue kampuni XYZ, si ndio? Lakini kule ndani tutaenda kupekua, tutafunua lile pazia kuona hivi in acting kwenye resolution ya kampuni ya tarehe 1, 2, 3 ilisema nini kuhusiana na jambo hili, au mwenendo, ndio tunasema kwamba hivi mwenendo, ile corporate culture, corporate behavior, corporate tunasema kwamba ile tabia ya kampuni hii hivi ikoje. Hii inaonekana ni kampuni ambayo ni ya kukwepa kodi. How do we know that? Tunarudi kwenye ile managing wale watu ambao wanaipa kampuni macho, masikio na brain. Hapo ndipo tutakapoanza, kwa sababu there's no way you can deal with the shareholders. Ndio maana kuna vitu vingi nimevyozungumza hapo kwamba when managing lazima focus, lazima mafikara ya hii board ambayo inafanya management lazima ielewe kwamba whatever it is doing is for the interest of the company, ambapo indirectly wanafanya ile kitu tunaita shareholder value maximization. Maana yake ni kwamba at the end of the day inapokuwa labda ni CRDB Bank inatakiwa ijue kabisa kama mwisho wa siku whatever the decision they make inaenda ku affect shareholders ambao wamecontribute shares kwenye ile kampuni. Well, there's no way you can sue the shareholders. You rather deal with the company, lakini in the process utaweza, maana unachukua kampuni na pia directors unaweza ukaunganisha na ukashughulika nao.
Thank you.
Nadhani hapo tumewekana sawa. Tutaomba kama kuna uwezekano siku moja tujaribu kuangalia zile trends